Now, more Ross and Burbank.
On 97.3 KIRO FM.
3 8-year-old boys were brutally murdered in a small town in eastern Arkansas. There is evidence the killings may have been part of a satanic ritual, but much about this awful case remains unclear.
Defense attorneys say the belief in a satanic ritual of sexual assault and mutilation was a fantasy, a satanic panic that they say sent 3 innocent teenagers to prison.
For some, it all ended when the accused were sent to prison. For others, that moment was just the beginning.
You can sign this paperwork and you can walk out of prison this week. Or you can refuse this deal and yeah, you'll eventually win, but we'll drag this out for another 5, 10 years.
Today, a bizarre final chapter with a stunning reversal. The West Memphis Three walked free.
The legal tangle that has become known as the West Memphis Three case is now finished.
It's pretty much everyone's worst nightmare. You're living your life. The police show up and accuse you of murdering 3 young boys, and you go to trial. A kangaroo court convicts you, and you find yourself in jail, sentenced to death. That's exactly what happened to Damien Echols. He has a new book out about it called Life After Death. Mercifully, he is no longer in jail. He's in the studio with us. Damien, thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
You were released on what date?
August 19th of last year.
It was about 18 years that you were incarcerated?
18 years. I was 18 when I went in. I spent 18 years in, so literally half my life.
And so since you've been out, because your story became a fascination for people all over the world, largely due to these documentaries that were produced and aired on HBO, are you used to being out yet? Will you ever be used to being out with the rest of us?
I don't know. Some days it seems like all of that stuff, the whole time in prison, the whole time on death row, it seems like it was a bad dream. And then some days I'll be sitting somewhere and all of a sudden it'll hit me. I'm actually out. You know, I'm sitting in a restaurant here, and then it seems like this is the dream. Like, how did this happen? For the first 3 months that I was out, I was in a state of extreme shock and trauma. I had to be led around almost like a blind man. I've been out about a year and a month now, and as time goes by, I come out of it a little more, just come back into being myself a little more each day. But it's still really, really hard, and there's still a great deal of anxiety and all sorts of other things that come along with it.
Reading your book, Life After Death, I was so fascinated by the way you described your feelings throughout being arrested and being interrogated in the trial, and even when you were in prison, because you write that you just kept thinking, well, they're going to figure out that I didn't do this. I mean, were you able to hold on to that even 15 years into being in prison? Because at some point it just seems like your will would be broken.
Well, I think in the beginning it wasn't any attempt to hold on to it. I just had that belief because I was naive. I was basically a child myself. I was still a teenager. And, you're raised in our society to believe in the whole foundation of innocent until proven guilty, that's the foundation of our justice system. And you start thinking it's impossible. It's physically impossible for them to prove you've done something you haven't done. And that's what I went into the trial with, and that's what I had all the way up until they sentenced me to death. So it wasn't like I was trying to hold on to it. It was eventually just like having my illusion shattered whenever I did lose that. Over time, I completely and absolutely lost all faith in the system. Just being inside of it, I saw how corrupt it was. I saw that it was just rotten to the core. So I had no faith, no belief in that. What I did have faith and belief in were the people that I was hearing from on a daily basis, the people who were fighting nonstop, tooth and nail, to make this case, part of the public consciousness, to get us out of a place where we should have never been in the first place.
Rotten to the core. When you say rotten to the core, you mean they targeted you out of convenience and
exactly.
Did not care what the truth was.
That's exactly it. We tend to believe that these people like judges and prosecutors and attorney generals, that somehow they have these positions because they're moral people or upstanding citizens. And in reality, they are politicians, just like senators, just like congressmen. They're elected. They will say and do whatever's necessary to win that next election. And that's always their first priority, even when you're going through a criminal trial. They've always got their eye on what that next election is going to be like. So, and that's why they fought so hard, even after the DNA and the eyewitnesses and stuff started coming in our case, they still fought as hard as they could to keep it covered up. It's because if you admit that you sentenced an innocent man to death while letting a murderer walk the streets, you're not going to win that next election.
But supposedly that's what the burden of proof is on them, right? The burden of proof is not on you to prove you didn't do it, obviously, because as you said, you can't. But the burden of proof is supposed to be on them. And, of course, the jury is selected from your peers, and they're supposed to be the ones that protect against the kind of miscarriage that happened in your case.
Exactly. A lot of it in our case, what it resulted from was the media. The media covered this case constantly, all the way up until trial. I mean, they jammed it down the public throat in the local area. And it's another thing, we always somehow or another ended up with this belief that the media is under some obligation to tell us the truth. And it's not true. It's a corporation. It's a business, just like anything else. Their number one priority is to make a profit. And who do they make a bigger profit from? These politicians who are pumping millions of dollars into the local media pool during election cycles, or a guy like me who they gain absolutely nothing from.
We're talking to Damien Echols. His book is Life After Death. You may have heard of his story through the Paradise Lost documentary. She'll be at Town Hall tonight. One of the things that seemed to happen to you and to your fellow accused, Jesse Miskelly and Jason Baldwin, was there was this, and I remember this growing up as a fundamentalist Christian kid, and there was this obsession with Satanism that happened in a lot of religious communities. Everybody thought that around every corner was some satanic ritual going on, and you were sort of on the radar, and this is for people that haven't seen the movies or read the book. You were on the radar of some of the law enforcement there, and they suspected you of being some kind of a devil worshiper, right? And that played into this?
A lot of it was just because of the way I dressed, the music I listened to, things like that. But there was also an element of corruption involved even there. It started off with these juvenile officers who used to come through our neighborhood and pick up teenage boys and say, either you perform sexual favors for me or you're going to jail.
What?
Wow. Did that happen to you?
These are police force, members of the police force?
Yeah, one of them eventually went to prison in Florida for stealing from the police department. His partner was eventually forced to quit the force after he was found out to be molesting teenage boys. No action was ever taken against them for that, but they used to terrorize the kids in our neighborhood. So whenever these murders happened, it was these guys who go to the real police department and say, we think we've got your guy. You need to look at this guy over here. They had been just harassing me for a good 2 years before these murders ever happened.
Yeah, there was one guy in particular that you write about who basically got you put in a mental institution and was like personally obsessed with you. What do you think it was that had him so obsessed with you?
I think he was a little unbalanced. He was one of the guys who thought there were Satanists behind every tree and rock. He would actually come through our neighborhood and show Polaroids of roadkill, and he would say it was evidence that there were satanic sacrifices going on in the neighborhood. But you could plainly see it was just like a possum with some tire tracks on it. So I think the guy wasn't put together very well. He's the one who eventually did go to prison in Florida.
We went through a phase like that out here, too, with this whole satanic cult thing. So those guys did finally get caught and put away?
Yes. Well, one of them was just forced to quit. The other one did go to prison, yes.
What blew my mind reading your book, Damien, was after all of this and when you're convicted, how quickly they set your execution date, which I guess you write is pretty typical. But, I mean, you were like months from being killed, and your attorneys, your state-appointed attorneys, weren't even going to basically file the appeal to keep you from getting executed?
They almost got me executed out of sheer incompetence. My original execution date was May 5th of 1994, and the attorneys that I had that are given to you by the court, they seem to be operating under this assumption that somehow or another an appeal was automatically going to be filed in my behalf. So they didn't file one until the very last minute whenever they realized, they're about to kill him. It was, you're dealing with people like in that sort of environment that they don't want to piss the judge off or the prosecutor because they have to work with them every day on a daily basis. They get paid the same whether they win or lose in your case, so it's not going to affect their life either way.
The tattoos you're wearing now, were you wearing them then?
No. I had, some ever since I was like 16 years old, and those are like old, horrible things that I've covered up now since I've gotten out.
Did you do those like on your own with
Yes.
like a pen or a safety pin or something?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Because I'm just wondering if that played a role in them choosing you for the fall guy.
I think it was a little bit of everything. Like I said, this was 1993. Now you turn on the radio and you hear Metallica coming on classic rock stations.
Mm-hmm.
And you didn't have that in 93. In 93 you think Metallica and people are like, oh, that's scary, dark stuff. So there was that. There was the way I dressed. There was the books I read. They actually introduced things like Stephen King novels as evidence against me that I was a Satanist.
We're talking to Damien Echols. His book is Life After Death. He'll be at Town Hall tonight. When we come back from the news, though, Damien, I want to talk to you a little bit about your relationship with your wife, who you write about extensively in the book. And this is a woman who basically took interest in you after seeing the documentary, and you credit her with saving your life, essentially
Yes.
being at some points the only person on the outside who was working on your behalf.
Yes.
And it's a pretty incredible love story at that. She's actually here in the building with us. So we'll talk about that.
And I want to hear more about how prison changes somebody.
Very good.
That's pretty scary, too.
Yeah.
When we come back, first the news.
Keeping you connected to the Northwest and the world. Seattle's news and conversation station. 97.3 KIRO FM.